Tennessee lawmakers addressed a number of issues during this year's legislative session.
The General Assembly adjourned on Wednesday, and to discuss this year's session, we're live with Republican State Senator Brian Kelsey of Germantown and Democratic Representative Antonio Parkinson of Memphis, both via Zoom. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. We could spend the entire hour discussing critical race theory and the ban on teaching that in Tennessee public schools, but I'd like to ask a wider question first. On the issue of transgender youth, there were two bills heavily discussed that impact what public schools can and can't do with regard to that. The U.S. population of transgender people is about 1%. And on the issue of critical race theory, the party proposing this, Brian, your party, couldn't name one Tennessee school where this is actually being taught currently. So in a time when we're facing unprecedented health challenges that have led to pretty unprecedented financial challenges for Tennesseans, why spend time on those issues when perhaps Medicaid expansion could have been discussed and was not? What would you say to constituents who would question that devotion to those issues as opposed to another?
Well, I would say that critical race theory is infused throughout America. And in fact, I was taught and indoctrinated with this thinking 20 years ago, because like most bad ideas in America, it began in America's liberal law school. So I know exactly what it is. It teaches that American democracy is a lie. It teaches that the rule of law does not exist and is instead a series of power struggles among racial groups. It's harmful to our students. It's antithetical to everything that we stand for as Americans and as Tennesseans, and I was proud to author the conference committee report to ban it.
So, Representative Parkinson, with that in mind, do you agree with that, or are you shaking your head?
Yeah, I was told not to curse today, so I'm trying to make it as mild as possible. The bad idea began when they started kidnapping individuals from Africa and putting them into human trafficking and bringing them over here to the United States and enslaving them and building a country on the backs of those individuals and acting like it didn't happen, and now attempting to water it down or to remove it completely from the hands of our educators to educate our children in the truth.
But,
that's the bad.
I'm wondering, to bring Senator Kelsey in, is this essentially a whitewashing, so to speak, or how do you view it?
Absolutely not. It's a Marxist theory that's totally against everything we stand for. Look, of course, we're going to, as Mary Beth pointed out, everything's going to stay the same. Of course, we're going to continue to teach the unfortunate history of America's involvement with race. Of course, we're going to continue to teach the evils of slavery and of discrimination. That's an unfortunate but important part of American history. What we're not going to do is we're not going to teach people that by the very color of their skin, they are necessarily oppressors. And we're not going to teach that, for example, critical race theorists believe that Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream that his children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. They believe that that's impossible and that that's a lie and that cannot happen. And we're going to continue to teach that it can and it should happen. That's what we should aspire to.
But again, neither of you answered the question. Why focus on transgender youth when clearly the population of transgender youth is teeny, teeny, tiny in Tennessee, as it is in the nation? Why focus on that, and why focus on something that is not currently being taught in any high school, middle school, or elementary school in Tennessee, when we are in a situation when hundreds of thousands of Tennesseans could have gotten better health care, access to health care, if you talked about Medicaid expansion? Why the priority?
That question was posed to Senator Kelsey, and he never answered it. But I will tell you this, though, as for myself, my colleagues, Democratic Caucus, the Black Caucus, our focus has been a three-pronged agenda the entire year, and that was health, education, and how do we put money on the tables into the households. These other fringe issues were issues that were brought by the Republican Party. And I'll let Senator Kelsey, I guess if he wants to answer that or not, answer why they kept on bringing these things and not giving people an opportunity, 300,000 Tennesseans an opportunity to have health insurance, and not, reducing the taxes for the Tennesseans so they can put money on the table, and not making sure that people had opportunities, more opportunities at employment, and they reduced unemployment also, and said that Tennesseans were lazy and they were making a lifestyle out of that $275 that the state gives them.
All right, gentlemen, before we run out of time here, let's move on. Let's also talk about some other issues here also, because obviously there's no agreement there, to say the least. What about guns and permitless carry and that major issue that we've seen here, especially in the state of Tennessee? What was accomplished there, or where do we need to go with that, Senator Kelsey?
Well, this was a priority for the governor to pass the permitless carry bill. I, along with Representative Parkinson, did not vote for that. But again, I think that there's, I'm happy to answer these questions. These are important issues to our children, and we did do these things. But frankly, we're not focusing on these issues. It's the media that focuses on issues. I'll tell you what we did. We reopened our schools. We provided tons of funding for summer learning loss camps and for reading tutors. We passed my constitutional amendment to ensure that the Tennesseans will have the right to work in the future. You can vote on that next November. And then the one thing we didn't do, we had opposition from people like Representative Parkinson, a former firefighter, on letting first responders live where they want to live. And that's what I hope we can get accomplished next year.
So,
and I still oppose it.
So if real quickly for both of you, what was the biggest miss? Was that yours, Senator Kelsey?
Absolutely. We need to let our policemen and our firefighters live where they want to live, and I will be working on that all summer and fall, and I hope that we can get it passed next year.
Representative Parkinson, what was your biggest miss?
Well, there's a bunch of misses. Expanding Medicaid when the Biden administration says that there are trillions of dollars coming down to states that expand Medicaid. And we've been missing that for years. Over $1 billion infusion into the state for us to actually insure Tennesseans, right? Listening on the House floor as they said the 3/5 compromise was good. That's a big miss. Missing out on the opportunity to provide additional access to health. Missing out on the opportunity to acknowledge that racism is a threat to public health. When the American Medical Association said it, and then right after they killed it, the CDC said the same thing. We missed out on a lot of opportunities to improve quality of life for Tennesseans. But our colleagues across the aisle, they were hell-bent on making sure they suppressed as many voices as they possibly could, making sure that they gave you legal immunity if they could to run over protesters. These are the things that they wanted to do. So they want to make sure that no one has a voice. Big on the Second Amendment, on the right to bear arms, but definitely not the same.
In fairness, we should mention that Republican leadership did mention Medicaid expansion would be on the table. Perhaps it will be next